This is NewLeaf Woodworks, and today we're going to make a wooden soap dish. Let's get started. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to try to batch out multiple soap dishes. I have a 1x8 piece of poplar here. I have it measured out that I should be able to make 6 of these hand soap dishes, these bar soap dishes. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how I'm going to set it up here on the table saw, and we'll go through and make all the cuts we need as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So the first cuts that I'm going to lay out are my first cuts, my initial cuts to get my stock ready so I can do all of the design cuts later and finishing pieces. So my goal here is to make 6 soap dishes, as I mentioned earlier. We have 12 inches measured to this first line, so that gives me 4-inch long soap dishes, 1, 2, and 3. However, I need to account for the kerf of the blade. So the blade on the table saw will take out wood material, and you lose about 1/8 inch of material every time you cut. So I measured out about 5/8 inches longer out here, made a second line so that will accommodate how much stock I'll need for the waste in the blade cuts. For the width of my soap dishes, so I have about 3 inches here, 3 inches up here, and I shouldn't have to worry about the kerf of the blade because I can cut on the inside or outside depending on your perspective of these two pieces right in here. And so what you'll see me doing here is I'm going to make my length cuts. So I'm going to measure out about 4 inches on my table saw sled to the inside kerf of this side here. So the blade should cut fairly close to that edge. I'm going to clamp that down and make my cuts there. So I should have 6 almost nearly identical pieces, unless there was some human error. Generally speaking, they're ready to go for the next cuts. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to make this look a little bit nicer than just a block of wood. Anytime that you're using the bandsaw and you're cutting small pieces at awkward angles, definitely use caution. If you're not comfortable making that cut or making that using that technique, just don't do it. Figure out a new design or figure out a new way to make that cut that isn't going to include your fingers being that close to the blade, because it can be really dangerous. So I got all these pieces cut out in this shape right here, but if you look at some of them, the shape is not quite as well cut. There's a few imperfections. I'll have to clean that up on the belt sander, get that smoothed up, then we'll move on to the next step. So all I'm doing here is I'm going to set up a stop block. These are going to make grooves in the top of the soap dish just decoratively, and all I have to do is cut once, flip it around, cut it, and it'll be even on each side. There we go. I think my saw needs plugged in first. So that's all the video content that I have for this project. I want to review a couple of the mistakes that I made with this project, so hopefully you can avoid them in the future if you choose to make something like this on your own. I also want to show you a method that I use to help preserve crafts and items like this made out of wood so they last for a long time. So we're going to take a quick up-close look at some of the things that I did and some of the things that you can do differently next time to hopefully make your project go a lot more smoothly. So this is the finished product that I have right here. I made these designs here, these cuts on top that you saw in the video. Remember I showed you how if you set up a stop block, you can cut one side, flip it over, and then cut the other side, and that makes it uniform the whole way across, about equal distance from each side then. And then you just work your way in towards the middle until you have the design that you want. The bandsaw cut was basically this cut right here. And the one cut that I did not show you was the cut on the bottom, this sort of dado. I kind of worked this out with the table saw blade to make it look like this, and that was just my own preference. And then the final cut was this cut across here, which cut up just high enough the top to make these drain holes. So that's what happened there. So one of the mistakes that I made, and I would recommend to all of you, is make sure that if you're making something like this where you end up removing large amounts of the material down to where you have a thin piece in the middle holding it together, is make sure that your grain runs this direction. The six that I made in the video, actually the grain was running this direction, and as soon as I got it too thin, it just snapped in half right at the grain. So definitely be mindful whenever you have thin pieces like this, where there's not very much wood holding it together, that you have the grain running across those thin pieces. Because if you don't do that, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of broken pieces that are completely useless, just like I did. And I had to remake all of those. I generally just use cutting board oil or something to that effect, just a mineral oil. And it's very simple. You just pour it all over it. You can rub it in, let it soak into the wood, and then I would do this every so often. I mean, every time you'll start to notice that it no longer has that oily finish to it. Clean it up if you have soap remnants on a soap dish like this. Clean up the soap off of it, and then just reapply a mineral oil finish, something to this effect, and it'll help preserve something like this, especially if you're making these as gifts. That's something that you can tell whoever you're making it for to go ahead and do that. So it's pretty simple. So that about wraps it up for this video. I wanted to give you a quick update on a new website that my wife and I made called themakinglife.com, where we're going to have blog posts, video content, an upcoming podcast. We invite you to come on over there and get engaged. We want to encourage all those that do not make to start, and those that do to keep making. So with that in mind, please, if you have any questions, leave me a comment down below. And until next time, keep making, and thank you for watching.